Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tower Babble podcast. As always, I'm Julian Mush. I'm joined by Jeremy Cozier.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going, Jeremy? What's new? What's going on?
Nothing's new. I'm doing well.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were just chatting before the episode started here. Not too much to talk about, but here's what we are going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about Chris Nolan leaving Warner Brothers. We're going to talk about the Emmy Awards. We're going to talk about a few other fun things. There's a choice quote from Denny Villeneuve that I want to touch on, and it should be a quick one, a quick breezy one. But who knows? It's hard to predict. If you're new to the show, what we like to do here is like to cover the latest in film and television news. Sometimes we talk about video games, and in our special TOB Games episodes, you can see those as kind of bonus episodes in the feed. And if you want to find everything that we do, you can head over to towerbabble.ca. That has access to all of our episodes, and including all of our old legacy stuff, our Watchmen, HBO's Watchmen recaps. We have our Game of Thrones recaps on there. There's the first season of Westworld is in there too. So lots of fun stuff in there. That's towerbabble.ca. And head over to Twitter, twitter.com/TowerBabblecast. Facebook.com/TowerBabblecast as well. That's where you're going to find all the kind of news and what's going on. In fact, we are recording this live. We do that semi-regularly. The best place to keep up with that is going to be on Twitter and Facebook. And we record live on YouTube, Twitch, and on Twitter. So you can find us there and join the conversation. We always like to have a few people in the chat room joining in on the convo. So let's get into this. Well, actually, wait, one more thing, Jeremy. We're going to be doing, I want you to talk about this because it was your pick. We do a monthly film club for the Patreon. We have a Patreon for the show, patreon.com/TowerBabblecast. And you can help support the show there. But again, this is exclusive to Patreon subscribers. And this film club, this month, we're kind of doing a bit of a Nick Cage special because last month we did Face Off. This month, Jeremy, what movie are we doing?
We're doing a movie called Snake Eyes.
Which is...
Not to be confused with the G.I. Joe movie. I guess I say that every time. But I think it's from 97 or maybe 99.
Yep.
But it's just a really cool mystery action thriller. And I've seen it one time, like way back when, but I don't know, I just really liked it. So I'm excited to revisit it. And since we've been doing some Face Off and just kind of talking about Nicolas Cage, it'll be cool to see his performance here and how it differs, and just take a look back at his his most famous time period, in my opinion, which is the late 90s there.
Yeah, and this is a Brian De Palma film, so it has a little bit of cachet to it as well, though probably a much less talked about one.
We've got Gary Sinise in this movie as well.
Also at a peak of his career, some might say. And it's funny, Jeremy, we're talking about 90s movies, and we did a 90s movie last month, and we're going to do a 90s movie this month. And, of course, we have the sequel to the greatest 90s movie of all time, and The Matrix coming right away. And I have been, I guess, on a 90s binge myself. I watched two movies from the 90s I'm going to talk about at the bottom of the show, The Negotiator and U.S. Marshals. And and they're both on Netflix. So we'll talk about that at the bottom of the show, but it just seems to be in kind of the same vein. And just, again, Jeremy, speaking to kind of why we do these film clubs, you're talking about having only seen this movie once in the 90s, and we're like, okay, well, let's try and see how it holds up today. That's really kind of half the fun of this stuff, and I really enjoy seeing, like, how would it have played then, and kind of how I feel about it today are two very different things. And that's always kind of a fun conversation. So look for that in the on the Patreon exclusive feed. Okay, let's get into the actual news. Couple big things. We'll start with this Disney CEO, Bob Chapek, who's, I think, less popular than the previous Bob, who was in charge of Disney, revealed that Shang-Chi will make its way to Disney Plus on November 12th of this year. So that's not that exciting, but what is exciting is that he went on to say that from now on, and it's not clear if November 12th specifically is going to be the day, but this day will be known from today until the end of days as Disney Plus Day, and it will be used to, quote, have new content released against one of our 4 key franchises, unquote, reading from IGN. And I'll read a little bit from the Disney press release. On Friday, November 12th, the Walt Disney Company will host Disney Plus Day, a global celebration that will come to life across all dimensions of the company. Subscribers to Disney Plus will be treated to new content releases across the service's iconic brands, Disney, Pixar, Marvel, and Star Wars, plus obviously National Geographic and Star in international markets, along with special presentation on Disney Plus for fans with sneak peeks into what's to come. Additionally, the service will come to engage new audiences around the world as Disney Plus expands into new Asia-Pacific markets on November 12th. So, yada, yada, yada. This inaugural Disney Plus Day will be a grand celebration of our subscribers across the entire company, said Bob Chapek. Yada, yada, yada. So, here's the thing. I'm really not sure how I feel about this because it really feels like just like a big ad day. Like, here's what we're going to do. And I'm reading from a bunch of the kind of the stuff that they're doing. Okay, well, we're going to... Shang-Chi will be available to subscribe for everyone to watch. Jungle Cruise will be available to everybody. Right now it's on Premier Access. Then there'll be a bunch of shorts. One of them will be a series of shorts by Walt Disney Animation called Olaf Presents, which is a bunch of Frozen stuff. There's going to be more Frozen stuff. There's another animated short from Pixar called Ciao Alberto.
So it's just a content dump.
Yeah, it's
one
just
day.
Exactly. But then what's even lazier, I feel like, is here's the other kind of bits and pieces. A special celebrating the origins and legacy of Star Wars legendary bounty hunter Boba Fett. So it's just like a sneak peek at the show. A special celebrating the Marvel Cinematic Universe on Disney Plus with an exciting look towards the future. So it's like it's just all means
they're just
to
trying
market.
To get subscribers. Yeah. And like Disney Plus is that one that like people aren't really, long-term subscribers that kind of come and go based off whatever series is.
Do you think is that like
out.
an anecdotal thing? Like your friends, the people you know, are like they'll subscribe just for Mando. And
yeah, that's
and
just like from my own personal experience, I guess, just talking with people. I feel like I had a conversation. Maybe you weren't involved with it or whatever, but I feel like that's some of the people that I know. It's like they just go on and off of that one in particular, and then you keep the bigger ones like Netflix or Prime or whatever.
And it's funny because like I feel like everyone keeps their Netflix subscription, right? And
solid base.
I think it's because everyone started with that, but I think if you're really thinking about it, you're probably better off doing the opposite because from what I've noticed on Disney Plus is that there's actually been more content that I actually like on a regular basis, like actually want to watch on a regular basis than what's coming on Netflix. Now, what Netflix has is kind of like this rotating back catalog of content, hence the U.S. Marshals and the Negotiator. But but unless it's like there's a new season of The Witcher or a new season of Stranger Things, what's keeping you subscribed to Netflix? I guess as an aside, like what do you think is different there? Why do you think that is?
I mean, I feel like they probably have just a wider range of things available, right? Like, don't they update theirs more often? Like, I don't know. I just
like every summer they're like, here's all every week there's going to be some crazy new thing coming to Netflix, but then in reality, it's like really only 3 of those things appeal to any one person at a time, right? So sure, yeah, technically there's new shows every month. Every week there's that movie with the girl who dies, but she needs to it's just like there's this the one I most recently saw. It's like this teenage movie about this girl who passes away, but then she has to come back to Earth and solve all of her problems before she can go to heaven. Classic story. But that's not. I'm not going to be watching that. No offense to whatever that show is called.
You've also been on a Netflix tear recently. Like you've been in, you've looked everywhere in there, and you're just not feeling the content there.
I do do you ever do this, Jeremy? Where you do the rounds, where you
I don't.
You start on Netflix and you browse.
I don't even open up these apps.
You're just a YouTube man, YouTube and Twitch, basically.
Yeah, Twitter.
I spend a lot of time on YouTube as well. Like, so when I'm doing the rounds, I usually start on YouTube because I want a little bit of like an appetizer. Like, I don't want like a full meal right away, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of pick and choose on YouTube, you get whatever on there for sure. But
right.
I know what you mean.
So I start there, and then I'll go. I'm like, okay, now I feel satisfied. So I'll go to Netflix and I'll browse and see, well, what's new? Go through there, and I'll go through my list and say, no, I don't want to watch any of these things I added to my list. And then I will go to Amazon Prime, and I'll spend about 30 seconds there because there's not as much stuff that I want to watch. Or at least it's not presented in a way that surfaces the stuff that I want to watch. I think they really have a UI problem on Amazon Prime. And then I'll go to Disney Plus. I'll take a peek around there. The thing with Disney Plus is I already know is Apple TV Plus.
Isn't Ted Lasso on that?
Ted Lasso is on there, and that is exactly the reason I am subscribed. We're going through season 2 right now. We'll be talking about Ted Lasso. Well, I'm saying that if you're going to do it, watch all the stuff in a month and then unsubscribe because I personally, when I go onto Disney Plus, or sorry, Apple TV Plus, they all have the Plus now. Paramount Plus, it's like the thing.
Exhausting.
I go to Apple TV Plus, and it's like they have a massive catalog of things you can rent or buy. And it's like, I already subscribed to this service. Why are you even surfacing this to me? And then I go to the Apple TV Plus specific section, which is like just their content, and it's bare bones, Jeremy. It's not great, and it's not like the stuff is actually fine. Like the content itself is pretty good, but it's so limited in its scope, and it's so new. I guess maybe that's the problem. But I mean, but besides Ted Lasso, I'm hard pressed to find a lot of stuff that I'm going to be really into. I know there's other stuff on there that I should probably give a shot. There is that.
We got the Tragedy of Macbeth is going to be on there.
Well, there's going to be stuff. Like, that's the thing. There's going to be stuff that I'm going to want to watch. But like, I'm basically decided I'm going to, unless something comes onto Apple that is like really interesting to me, I'm unsubscribing after Ted Lasso season 2 is over.
Have you seen the Tragedy of Macbeth trailer?
I have not. Should I be excited?
Well, what I'd like you to know is that it is black and white, and it is a 4:3.
Okay, so it's like the Lighthouse.
Yeah, or Justice League.
Well, yeah, I mean, Justice League's not technically 4:3, but it is close enough. Yeah, agreed. Okay, it's like the Justice League black and white edition, which I'm sure we've all seen. What? Okay, but like who are their names behind it? What, like, get me?
Well, we got Denzel Washington.
Okay, all right, that's exciting.
Joel Cohen is directing it.
Okay, is this a period piece, or is it like a modern day version?
I think it's just about Macbeth. Like, I think it's like the story about all that.
Okay. Well, then maybe I'll give that a shot. All I'm saying is, it's been bare bones so far, and I don't know. The thing that I swear to God, the one feature that one of these services can master, if they can do this, I will be a lifetime subscriber. Okay, I want a TV station of your content that's on the show on your streaming service. Have all the time running. There's always new stuff on there, right? And it's whatever. It could be your catalog stuff. It's whatever. It's just like you go to the Netflix channel on your Netflix. You know how there's now that Netflix introduced that kind of like randomizer thing. You can turn that on and watch whatever it suggests to you. You know that, whatever it's called.
No, I don't know any of these things. This is all
okay. So there's a new feature.
What apps and pluses and this and premium and access and sections and features.
You gotta stay, Jeremy. You gotta stay up to date. These are the modern terminology you need to know. Okay. So you can go to Netflix now, and it has a like surprise. It basically has like, how Google has the "I'm feeling lucky" button. That no one uses.
I know that one.
Right. So it's that.
You can use it if you know that the top search of whatever you're searching is going to be the one.
Sure, but when was the last time you've used that feature?
I think it's like if you, instead of like typing in a web address, you'd like quickly type it, like you abbreviate it in Google, and then you say that, and then it brings you to that.
Yeah, but the thing is with "I'm feeling lucky" is you can't, like, I use Chrome, right? If you're in Chrome, you just type in at the top like a Google search and it goes there. But to use "I'm feeling lucky," you have to go to google.com. And it's like, who does that? First of all,
To Google.com?
who goes to Google.com? Type
What
that
do you
into.
mean?
I
It's
don't
most.
go
It's
to.
like my homepage.
It's so as I mean, in Chrome, it's not technically Google.com as a homepage. It's just the search bar, which is just the top of your. Also, the formerly the address bar used to be called that. You know,
Okay, good
it's
to know.
slightly. It's a slightly different. It's just
Great.
slightly different. But I agree with you. It's close enough. Okay, fair enough. Anyway, the point is, I want a TV station of the content on your streaming service so that if I don't know what to watch, I can just go to the station. Because
How about just open the app, then close
right,
your eyes, then
no,
press a few
no
arrows
way.
and clicks,
There's
and
no way I'm going
then
to do that.
press the button, and then
No, because I want it to be Jeremy. I don't want it to be random. I want it to be curated. That's the difference. You know, like prime
Yes.
time,
I mean,
and
they
this
have
would.
that for music.
But like, think of how cool this would be. And I've talked about this before on the show, but I'll just repeat it again.
It's
Think of how
not
cool
that
this would
cool.
be. If no, I think it is because you know how today
If it just starts
you know,
playing something, you might not. You're just gonna be like, no, I don't want to watch that.
maybe,
And then
but
what do you
sometimes
do?
maybe I will, and maybe I'll be interested, and I'll go watch the whole thing because it's available on the streaming service, right?
It just feels like you have no purpose, or like you're just like,
Here's
hey,
the
I'm on the couch, feed me, is
yes,
what you're saying.
that's what I'm saying, 100%.
It's
And
okay.
yes, it's gross, Jeremy. I get it, but here's the real like silver lining, the real like golden nugget in there. Okay, it's that you could use that feature to premiere new shows at like a certain time of the day. Game of Thrones came out at 10 p.m. on Sundays. Everyone was around their television for that, right? You could argue that today that is over with. No one's really no one's gathering around their television at the same time. We're not really having these communal experiences watching the show at the same time because the show drops at midnight and we all watch it the next day at some whatever random time we can watch it. Now, I'm not saying that needs to go away. What I am saying is instead of dropping it at midnight, you drop it at 8 p.m. on a Friday or at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday or whatever it is that you time you think makes the most sense. And that's the premiere time. And then after that, it's available to down. You can watch it whenever, stream it whenever. But then you get this TV station. It goes to, okay, we're going to premiere the new What If we're using Disney Plus as an example. Here's the new Marvel's What If. It's premiering at 8 o'clock everywhere. And that creates that communal experience that we don't have.
You just want the day, though. Nobody wants like a specific time.
But what's the difference, right?
Because people have schedule. It's all about convenience. It's not about making a new thing in your calendar.
But it's arbitrary because right now it's like you can watch it whenever you want on Wednesday, which tomorrow will be the new What If, the Thor episode.
Because I got other shit to do first, and then whenever I want to watch that, I can watch it, and then
Sure.
I know that I'm still on the first day, and I'm watching it still with the world essentially.
Yeah, but again, so instead of midnight on Tuesday when it's premiering now, it's now premiering Wednesday at 6. So if you don't get there in time for 6 o'clock, how is it not
arbitrary? Just the time itself, then like who cares?
Because because now you have the communal experience. That's the difference for me.
I don't know about that. I don't think there's a. Do you think there's a specific communal experience because you know that other people are watching this exact?
Yes, because and Twitter obviously plays a part in that, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my. I'm still holding out hope. That's my thing. I'm sure that this Disney Plus Day idea will be copied by other streaming services. The Paramount Plus Day, here's the new Star Trek stuff, and the Netflix Day, here's everything you need to know about the next season of Stranger Things. Whatever. It's gonna happen. It just feels a little because it's from Disney, especially now. Disney feels so much more commercialized than it ever has before. They're talking about their 4 pillars, and it's like everything is new Marvel, new Star Wars, new whatever. I'm into that. That's fine, but it's like it doesn't have to feel so commercial. That I don't know. It turns me off just a little bit. Any thoughts on this Disney Plus Day, Jeremy?
No, like I said, it's just a content dump day. Get people re-engaged with the service, and I see that just as a ploy based off what I hear from certain individuals in my circle that they just don't really subscribe to Disney Plus long term. They just kind of take their turns with it based off whatever content that they're into is out, like a Mandalorian or whatever, right? Like
whatever Marvel show or whatever. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, so let's move into something a little bit more juicy, a little bit more meaty. Okay, so there's been a lot of directors. Actually, let me back up even further. The movies of our era, of our age right now, of this era in cinema, are the superhero movies, right? They own the box office, right? And because they're the most popular, there's gonna be haters, and there's gonna be people who push back. There's
Are
just
you a hater?
there's always gonna be
Are you
um,
sometimes a hater?
sometimes I can go back and forth, right? But there's been some pushback, I think, from certain Hollywood members. We've seen Martin Scorsese have his take on what Marvel movies mean, or what superhero movies mean to him, or what they mean for Hollywood, and we've had others as well. Spielberg's chimed in, but most recently, the most recently, as in this week, the I think best director working right now, Denny Villeneuve, had his own quote kind of hit the press. Now, what I think is funny, before I even get into the quote itself, I think is this really, it's kind of sad a little bit to me, because it seems like anytime a director like this says anything about superhero movies or whatever, all of the media like latches onto it, and we're part of it. We're talking about it right now, right? But it's kind of weird. I just want to put that out there. It's just odd. It's like, who cares what everyone thinks about these movies? I don't need to be validated by having Denis Villeneuve agree that I like, that he likes Marvel movies too. I don't need that. But it seems like there is a subsect of pop culture that really looks to be validated by these kind of like icons of Hollywood. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Just a hunch that I kind of feel. Okay. So Denis Villeneuve, and I'll just read from an article from the AV Club here, okay? And Jeremy, then I'll let you chime in here with what you think. In a recent interview with Spanish newspaper El Mundo, interviewer Luis Martinez brings up Scorsese's views on Marvel movies. So it's funny because they're actually referencing a previous comment, to which the Dune director replies, quote, "Perhaps the problem is that we are in front of too many Marvel movies that are nothing more than a cut and paste of others." He adds, quote, "Perhaps these types of movies have turned us into zombies a bit, but big and expensive movies of great value, there are many today. I don't feel capable of being pessimistic at all," which is a bit of a funky, weird, I think, lost in translation bit here, but I think it comes into, it makes a little bit more sense with this follow-up quote. So talking about how, Dune is a big budget movie. How is it really any different than any of those movies? His response was, quote, "Just think of the golden age of Hollywood to see the commercial films, to see that commercial films can make a different artistic proposal and therefore political," he says. "I have never felt like a loss or an impediment to have a generous budget to do what I wanted to do. Upside down. Who said that a movie on a big budget can't be artistically relevant at the same time? I'm currently thinking of people like Christopher Nolan or Alfonso Cuarón." So I think this might be the best and most nuanced of these kind of takes on what superhero movies mean today, and kind of what this means for Hollywood, and specifically what it means for his filmmaking, because he's talking about, big budgets don't necessarily mean lifeless movies, or movies that don't, have something to say. And what he's basically saying is, though I don't necessarily think that every Marvel movie has something to say, and I think what he's saying is that some of them are cut and paste. In fact, Jeremy, we talked about this in our Shang-Chi review, which is that there is a certain formula to Marvel movies, and we can see it. You can kind of see it when you're watching.
Yeah,
the movie.
you know what to expect, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
then for him, if he just sees that over and over again, even if there are ones in between that have a bit more artistic merit, it's still like concerning to him, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But he's saying that he's not saying that that's necessarily the problem. He's just saying that they could probably strive for more. That they're not, that despite these massive budgets, they have all this
just being safe.
money. Yeah, they're playing it safe. I think that's
And
kind
if
of
you're
what
gonna get
saying.
that big budget, that means it's the checklist that's included with that, with all the people kind of funding that, and that checklist includes all the things that Marvel is just kind of known for and has to have.
Right. And of course, he references people like Christopher Nolan and Alfonso Cuarón. So of course, I think those, I mean, and obviously, and also, of course, Scorsese, these are all directors who have cut their teeth in Hollywood for many years and have earned those big budgets and also the freedoms to tell the stories they want. You could argue that Marvel, despite the big budgets, aren't really giving the directors the creative freedom. In fact, we know that that's not the case. Because it's right, because the story, all that stuff is done from the studio level, and it's just more of like a TV driven style, right? And that's fine. It's just very different from the world that he grew up in, and he talks about and mentions the golden age of Hollywood. You know, having these kind of big movies that did have, that were different and had something to say. And in this case, he uses the specific word political, which I know it can sometimes be a little bit of a toxic word these days, but it's true. I mean, Marvel movies are political. Star Wars movies are political. These are all truths. I just like, so first of all, I personally consider Denny Villeneuve to be in the same caliber as Christopher Nolan and Alfonso Cuarón currently. Like, I don't think he's looking at them as being kind of like these milestone, at least from the way I'm interpreting or feel like I'm reading this quote, that these are kind of like these people to look up to for his career. But personally, for me, I think that he's already there. A movie like Dune, massive budget. We already know it's going to look super gorgeous. And by the way, he mentions, and we'll get that later, about how he feels about it coming to television via HBO Max. But what do you think about this kind of trend of being asked these questions, Denny's response? What's your kind of thoughts on this?
I mean, it's always interesting, but it's like you kind of know what these directors or of this caliber are gonna think about this if they're asked about a specific type of movies, which they aren't making. And I like how he says he knows that there are some and that they exist. And I also find it interesting too, like you have the Joker movie, which had tons of praise, super low budget, made $1 billion. At one point, had Martin Scorsese attached on the first one, and obviously heavily influenced by Taxi Driver and what else? The other
What's
movie.
the something comedy? What's it called? You know what I'm talking. We know.
We know.
You guys know what I'm talking.
Everyone knows.
Yeah.
And there's even a rumor that Martin Scorsese will be producing Joker 2.
Interesting.
Which is also rumored to be kind of going on behind the scenes.
What does a Joker 2 even look like? That's so crazy. I don't like. It's nuts to me. But anyway, yeah. Continue. Yeah. Sorry.
So I'm very interested to see how that kind of plays out. And yeah, like I don't know. I mean, what else is there to say? Really, like, I guess I agree. I don't know, like.
Wait, so yeah, I guess that is the. I didn't put this into an agree or disagree segment, but do you agree with Denny's kind of take here that these movies have, in his quote specifically, I think the biggest one is turned us into zombies a bit. Big and expensive movies of great value. There are many today. I don't feel capable of being pessimistic. So he talks about being kind of. He kind of says both sides of things. He says, isn't it a shame that we're all turned into zombies by these Marvel movies? But also, I can't be pessimistic because money's being spent to make big movies, and I make big movies, and that's good for me. So I guess there's a little bit two sides to the coin. I've been Jeremy. I know when we started this journey as a podcast, we were like, it was like Marvel movies were like the coolest shit, and they still really are. Okay. But I have kind of started to think about the impact of what it means when only superhero movies are the only movies available, or the only ones that make any money, and kind of what that means for the long term of movie making. And I think there's a lot of, he mentions pessimism here specifically. I think there is a lot of pessimism, from folks like Scorsese saying, the old days were better and it's all doom and gloom now. I don't know if that's necessarily true. There's things that I'm worried about, things like how film is kind of has turned into, it's not movies and television anymore, it's just content, right? And it just needs to fill a list of things that you can watch on your streaming service. I think that's concerning.
Content gets greenlit based off of its history or its connection to the wider audience or pop culture, or if a relevant name or nostalgia is involved.
the algorithm, right? Well, it has this star, it has this trope, and it it has a happy ending. Therefore, it'll pull in this many views and keep this many subscribers. Like, I feel like that is the business side of movies has always been there, but I feel like it's so much more prevalent now than it ever has been. And maybe maybe this is what people have been saying since the beginning of movie making. But it certainly feels like we're at an inflection point. So there's going to be questions about this, especially. But what I think is really interesting about this is that Denny Villeneuve is still relatively young in terms of his career, and he has to continue to work in this existing system for many years, right? I mean, it doesn't have to, but he likely will. When you talk about someone like Spielberg, he's basically retired, right? He's not making a lot of movies anymore. His era is kind of over with. Same with Scorsese to some degree, right? Those movies aren't really made anymore, and when they are made, they're not made for the new system. They're made in the old way. So what makes me worried is that, like, what's this like in 10 years, 20 years? Are we getting? Is that style, that the Denny Villeneuve, the Spielberg, the Scorsese, the Nolan, the Cuarón, is that kind of artistically driven, visually stunning, made for theaters movie gone because no one knows how to make it anymore in the same way? I don't know, but it's certainly concerning. So on that kind of same vein, I'll talk about kind of a few kind of tangential things. Patty Jenkins recently said that movies that are coming to streaming services, quote, look like fake movies, unquote, and that it's, quote, not working as a model for establishing legendary greatness, unquote. Now, she got a lot of backlash for this, mostly because Wonder Woman 1984 was a flop and not a good movie. But not all that's on her. And this, quote, can be separate from that movie, I think. And personally, I think she's spot on. I think I've been kind of talking about this for a little bit. There's movies that come to Netflix, specifically Netflix, by the way. These Netflix specifically made movies, these originals, are bad movies. They're not good movies, and it sucks. Actually, it makes me sad a little bit.
But can you say this if your last movie was a bad movie?
I mean,
and looked fake.
But like, I don't think that's what she means by fake. I don't think she's saying they look fake, like the CG's bad or whatever. I think she's saying that she's using fake movies.
They're faking the kind of epic, scale feeling or whatever.
I think that's fair. Yeah. And so, but like, you're right, Jeremy. I think it's fair to hold her to account. Like, let's not be, let's not forget that the last movie you made sucked. That's totally fair. I think she's already heard that. I think, all that being said, I think she's right. I think that she says specifically in this last part here, it's not working as a model for establishing legendary greatness. Now, I've heard that there was an interesting quote, I think, from James Gunn, who said that movie greatness isn't made in the theaters, it's made on television because that's where people saw it for years and years and years after it premiered in theaters. And I thought, that is interesting because, I saw a lot of movies on TV when I was growing up, and that kind of informed my, what I thought was good. But that doesn't necessarily mean those movies were good, right? And furthermore, I would say that the reason that those movies are played on television is because they were big cultural hits at the box office. So if you remove the box office element altogether, there was no cultural moment where we all got together to watch Shang-Chi, for instance. Does it have the same resonance if it goes straight to streaming? And it's like, oh, sure, people can watch it for the next 50 years on television. But does that, just because they can, doesn't mean they will, and also doesn't mean that's what makes it great. I think that having it premiere in the theaters with it being a cultural moment is what makes something a blockbuster. I don't think you can fake it. I'm trying to think of, like, is there any exceptions to that? I don't know, Jeremy, can you think of any exceptions to that? Like something that premiered specifically in streaming that was like the equivalent of a blockbuster.
Snyder's Justice League.
I guess, but that's kind of like that's a whole different thing, right? Like it has all this extra weight to it, right? This extra baggage that comes from what was originally a theatrical release.
Right.
Not that it was his, you know what I mean? I also thought that. I'm thinking like Cuarón's last film, Roma, right? I don't think no one would consider that a blockbuster. Let me just say that right now. I would say that it had cultural impact and is a truly great movie that will probably endure the test of time. I don't know, Jeremy, would you agree with that in terms of Roma?
Yeah.
But like I think that's an exception, and it's not, and that's because it's the specific type of movie that it is. I don't think you can recreate. I think Black Widow might be the best example of this. I saw it exclusively. I paid for the premiere. Actually, I think Daniel paid for the premiere access. But I watched it here on my television that's playing behind me, playing Ted Lasso behind me. And I thought it was, it was fine. And I thought, it was nice enough seeing my TV's big enough, and, HDR was nice and the 4K looked good. But, and by the way, the HDR on my television makes me wish we got better digital projection at our local theaters, but that's another different problem. It has no resonance for me, and I don't know if that would be true necessarily if that came to it did premiere in theaters at the same time.
It would still be the same. I waited and I saw it in the theater, and same thing. It was fine.
Right. Okay.
And almost telling people that you may as well just watch it at home if you want to see
it. Right. Okay, but I guess we don't really have a true test of this. It's hard to. There's no really way to know. But it feels like to me you couldn't have a Jaws, and obviously Jaws, I use Jaws as like kind of one of the first blockbusters, right? But you couldn't have a Jaws unless Jaws was in theaters, right? And maybe that's changing, but that's just how I feel about it now. So I kind of agree with how Patty Jenkins is kind of thinking about that. Meanwhile, Netflix is eyeing up more theatrical releases. I think this is really fascinating. Quote, in a bid to have bigger cultural impact. And this is coming from a JP Morgan analyst. So it's, this isn't straight from the horse's mouth necessarily. But if that's true, I think it lends credence to what Patty Jenkins is saying.
JP Morgan?
JP Morgan is a bank.
Isn't that the firm in the Boiler Room?
It is one of the firms in Boiler Room. It's one of the biggest financial institutions in the entire world. And JP Morgan Chase, they appears in a bunch of movies, and I'm pretty sure it's even in The Big Sick, or not The Big Sick, but what's the one where about the financial crisis in 2007? Anyway, Big Short. Thank you. This is coming from an analyst, so they hire a bunch of analysts because Netflix stock is worth something, so everyone looks into that stuff. This is just how the modern world works. It sucks, but I think it's fascinating, if true, that they are looking to release more things theatrically, because I think one of the big things was that they didn't want to do any of that. That caused that whole big controversy with the Oscars, saying that to be considered for the Oscars, you have to be released in theaters for at least a certain amount of days at a certain amount of theaters. I think they've loosened that a little bit, especially last year. But those similar rules will probably continue. If specifically here they're saying it's for bigger cultural impact. So something is saying to Netflix that our movies aren't landing. There's no people aren't talking about these movies. Why isn't that? So we've been and Jeremy, I'll just throw it back to you for a second here, but we've been talking about this stuff for basically since COVID started, which is like, what's the future of movie going? What does it mean in the streaming world? People are writing it off as being dead. If Netflix is saying we want bigger cultural impact and they're looking to theatrical releases to do it, what does that mean?
What does that mean? I don't know. I mean, I think they see the value in the theatrical release and just that zeitgeist that it can put everybody or mix everybody up in with. But you don't always have that as a for sure thing when you release something. But right now, it's just so weird with the pandemic. Like, it's just so hit or miss. Like, it's either because of the pandemic or it's because of the content itself people don't want to see it or something.
And the only way to know is for when COVID's over is when we'll really finally get to know. right?
Yeah,
Like,
because
is that
even with
yeah.
like there was a rumor that a bunch of movies were gonna get delayed that were coming out this fall
Mm-hmm.
if
Top Gun 2,
Shang-Chi didn't
motherfucker.
perform well.
Yeah,
And
and it
then
did.
it performed well, and then Venom like moved up, like it like moved its date closer.
Mm-hmm.
Venom 2. So I don't know, and like yeah, like Black Widow came out at a weird time, I guess.
Well, I think, but that might be another example of like, is that the day and date release strategy? How does that play into it? Is the movie just not that great? You know, like
Yeah,
where does
exactly.
that? How's that all fit in? You know, I don't. It's complicated. I think to me, this is all. There's a lot of moving parts, right? We've got obviously the pandemic. We've got the state of theaters, and like, do people even like spending time in theaters when people are talking and there's babies? We went to Shang-Chi, Jeremy, and there was that kid, two kids, right, one row in front of us, right? Not great, you know, from terms of like trying to pay attention to a movie, not great, right? First of all, why are you taking your kids to a 10 o'clock showing? I guess it was a 7 o'clock showing. Fair enough, but whatever. The point is, there's a lot of moving parts. We just won't know for I don't know when the dust is going to settle, but I think it's at least a year out, at least. And then again, I'll just mention this is last bit on this, kind of all related, and coming back to Denny again. This time on Dune Coming to Hbo Max, he says, quote, "Frankly, to watch Dune on a TV is like driving a speedboat in a bathtub," unquote. Which I love that quote. It's so good. I think it's a great analogy.
Yeah.
The movie's made for the big screen, and there's something to be said. Ask Chris Nolan about it. He obviously fully believes in that stance. Then, and if that's the case, I think you are doing yourself a disservice. You know, there's going to be a lot of stuff on the day it's released, right? People watching it on their iPhone, people watching it on like
Dune.
just this. Yeah, Dune. It's people are just gonna be making people are gonna be making fun of how you could just watch it on any random device and like the way it was intended, you
Right.
know.
But
I
don't
think
think you're gonna find someone who'd say that it's better on any other platform. That's not in the theater. You know what I mean?
but
Like,
convenience though, Jeremy, right?
yeah,
Like,
convenience is cool. Like, and if it's the only your only option, it is what it is. Like,
mm-hmm.
but there's always going to be that thing you say, while you're watching it, that like, yeah, this is, at least
The
we can
wow
watch it
moment,
here.
right?
And then he's right in terms of the speedboat, the bathtub. It's like if you're in the theater, you just have so much size and scope and sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's just always going to be better. Like it just there's no comparison. Like
Yeah. And I know people are talking about like, oh, you know, the future of VR will allow you to watch movies on the biggest screens you've ever seen, and you know, headphones will be able to mimic this 7.1 surround, but like, no, they won't, because bass, you need a big tweeter to actually get real bass, and to have real bass makes a big difference in a movie, and you need that Dolby, you know, Atmos sound, and you know and like the true digital projection. Like I think there's something human about going to the theater, and that'll always be true regardless of what technology we have available to us. And maybe that'll change. Maybe we'll be wrong, but I don't want to be wrong. We got someone in the chat here. Some Goner asks if I'm drinking water in a beer glass. That's correct. I am drinking water in a beer glass, but that's only because I finished my glass of wine. So, and then called me heathen. I think that's fair. Good to have you here, though, regardless. Okay, let's move on. Christopher Nolan. Speaking of Christopher Nolan, he has chosen Universal to help him make his next movie, which will be about J. Robert Oppenheimer, the, quote, father of the atomic bomb, unquote. But Nolan actually met with several studios to potentially fund the project, but only Universal was able to meet Nolan's steep demands. Now, this is a story from The Hollywood Reporter. This is crazy, Jeremy. Okay?
why is this crazy?
So let me read the demands, okay? So Universal, Sony, and Apple, which, interesting, Apple is involved, learned he wanted total creative control. That's not surprising necessarily.
Not at all.
Including Final Cut.
What no one wants, no one gets.
Sure, yeah. At least a 100-day theatrical window, okay? around $100 million budget.
Pretty low.
That's fairly, for a Nolan movie, fair enough. Equal marketing, so $100 million on marketing. 20% of the first dollar gross. That is an insane number. And this is, I think, just funny. A blackout period where the studio would not release another movie for 3 weeks before and after the feature came out. So this is so funny to me because
but that comes with the territory with the Christopher Nolan movie. No one wants to touch that. That's not necessarily something that he's like, okay, here's my list and this is the third one, it must be met. That's like his agent or just kind of the people who promote his huge movies that come out, and that's just in there because why not? Like, it should be all about him when the new Christopher Nolan movie comes out, right? Like, director of Inception, director of
from the
Dark
director.
Knight. Like, it's just you know what I mean. Like, you're not going to want to touch that regardless.
That's fair, but like, why does it matter if a movie comes out 3 weeks before? Anyway, like, who cares if a movie comes out before? I don't. Yeah. Anyway, that's funny.
Well, I guess because you had I guess he got burned with Tenet before, mostly due to the pandemic or whatever. But now that it's more viable, like it would just kind of for sure guarantee that it'd be a success, I think.
Right. So here's the first of all, it's a new word. Marcos, good to see you in the chat. Always love to see you there. We're talking about Nolan movies. His next movie is about Oppenheimer. I think that's really fascinating. Do you think this is Nolan kind of, we're talking about $100 million budget. This is not another Tenet. This is kind of like another, it's a smaller budget Nolan movie, kind of something a little bit more down to earth, less bombastic, maybe. Obviously, we're talking about the father of the atomic bomb. That's a fascinating story.
It's not sci-fi.
Yeah, it's just not sci-fi. And so, when you hear that, that's Nolan's next movie, does that excite you? What do you feel about that?
Oh, for sure. When I heard that, I was like, I almost got chills actually, just thinking of him tackling like a real life story.
Well, Dunkirk is the last one he did that was like that, right?
And then with this one, just such a a monumental thing in human technology or whatever, or, you know what I mean? Like, it just what a major invention, and changed the course of history essentially. So I'm super excited to see this take.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously I'll always come to see a Nolan movie. I saw lucky to see Tenet in theaters for that brief window when theaters were open during the pandemic last year. And I'm glad I got to see it in theaters. We'll just put it that way. I'm wondering if he'll ever change his sound mixing, if he'll ever get enough flack for that. He keeps getting it every single movie. I'm wondering if like a movie like this, which is much more just like a period piece that's like just about a person, not about maybe like a big battle like Dunkirk was, maybe it'll change things up, but we'll see. I think what's crazy here though, this 20% first dollar gross is a insanely huge amount of money. Assuming the movie does well, which usually
that's what he would get received.
He makes let's assume a movie ticket costs $10. Okay, he gets, just him, before anyone else gets any money, $2 of that $10 goes to him. It's a fucking huge amount of money. And I guess no one else gets to demand that. But
it's this movie. I don't know. He sells this, right? Like, we're going to go see a Christopher Nolan movie. He puts all his everything into it, like his uniqueness, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Why, like, 20%? And it's his creative baby, essentially.
Yeah, but there's more people involved in making movies than just one man.
Well, I don't think I think it goes to like his whole team too, right? Like, this whole production.
I don't know about that. I mean, this is like Nolan specifically. These were his demands, apparently. By the way, Marcos says The Prestige, which is by obviously Nolan, is one of the best movies I've seen recently. When you guys did it for the film club, yeah, we did recently do The Prestige for the film club. Like, that was a few months back, and it is great. That might be one of his best movies, if not his best movie. And I don't know. I mean, so whatever, he's gonna make his money. That's fine. I think the most interesting thing about this, though, is that apparently Warner Brothers was prepared to meet these demands. Right? They're like, okay, we can do that, but he chose to leave anyway. He felt so burned by
Suck it, Warner Brothers.
By Warner Brothers. And burns a bridge in some. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's not necessarily burning a bridge. I'm sure they'd love to have him back, but he's basically saying, "Screw you for what you did." To this, like, with this day and date release strategy with HBO Max, right?
With lots of things too. Even with the Snyder Cut and all that stuff too. It's all wrapped up into one. Especially when you talk about like creative control and all that stuff too.
Right. So he's just saying, no, I'm done. And like, there's that obviously that great quote where he says, we went to bed working for the greatest film studio, and then we woke up working for the worst streaming service. And sure, I mean, Warner Brothers, as we know, Jeremy, because we've talked about it at infinitum, does not have the best track record when it comes to taking care of its talent of recent note, right? I think we haven't seen the final the dust hasn't settled on Warner Brothers kind of becoming its own thing again, right? Not being this kind of child company to Verizon or whoever, AT&T, whoever owned them.
Well, then they were basically sold again recently to Discovery.
Discovery. So, but
that hasn't taken a hold yet either.
But those are at least they're media companies. We're talking about Discovery. They make they own Discovery Channel, other stuff, and whatever. But ultimately, we're talking about two companies that are merging that make content that is on film. You know what I mean? Like doesn't seem like this weird marriage. Mm-hmm. And so I'm willing to see how that plays out. What I'm thinking is, in the long run, it'll be better for talent. People will like working for them again more, and they'll be making better decisions that will help talent make the movies and content they want to create. But we're not there yet. They're still dealing with the backlash of some of the stuff. I know Denny, speaking of Denny, we were just talking about him. He was pissed about Dune coming out on HBO Max, right? And there was rumors that it wasn't going to happen, and it's looking like now it's definitely still going to happen. Like, Dune's going to premiere on HBO Max day and date in theaters. And I think we talk about Denny Villeneuve making some of the best movies that no one fucking sees. I don't know if this is help or hurt that, but Blade Runner 2049 is one of my favorite movies of all time. And no one saw it. It's a cult movie. The original Dune, notoriously a cult film, obtuse, hard to watch. We're dealing with, the reboot of that. Will it face the same fate, that Blade Runner 2049? I don't know. But I don't know if releasing it on HBO Max is going to help. So there's just a lot of, again, moving parts. It's interesting that he chose Universal, though, of all the studios here. Are you getting the sense, Jeremy, that he's kind of just picked Universal as this just for this movie, and that from now on he's just going to kind of he's going to shop around for every movie?
I mean, it's very possible. It just seems like he was just done with whatever was happening at Warner Brothers, whoever was in charge, how they're treating everything, and he wanted out regardless. And then Universal, pretty huge, theatrical type, studio or whatever.
Right.
It just makes sense to go with them instead of going to Apple TV or you know what I mean? Because he's all about the theater. So
yes,
going to these streaming services wouldn't be an option.
But here's the thing. So that's why Apple's so funny here, because Apple obviously was willing to say, yeah, theatrical release, we'll do that for you. But Apple ultimately is not a major movie studio, at least not yet. And Universal, by the way, all this news comes on the heels of this rumor, and I don't know if it's rumor. It's probably it's probably fairly true, that Universal is, quote, looking to retreat from big theatrical productions to focus on titles such as remakes, branded content, and cheaper fare that will service its streaming service, Paramount Plus. So, there's a little bit of I don't know, karma. There's a little bit of there's something funny here about how Christopher Nolan leaving Warner Brothers saying, screw you, and I hate your stupid streaming service. I'm going to go to Universal, where they care about movies until they don't. They care about Paramount Plus. So, and Sony, which, it's interesting that Sony didn't actually land this because Sony, notoriously the only major movie studio that doesn't have its own streaming service, right? It shops all of its movies to all the other streaming services, which is why you don't always get all the Spider-Man movies on Disney Plus. But they and Sony paid big bucks for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, another auteur filmmaker, in Tarantino. So interesting. I think at this point now, it's kind of one of these scenarios where you've got these big names. You can kind of just take your movies wherever you want to go. You don't necessarily need to have this kind of like established relationship with these studios like we've previously seen, and maybe that might be better for everyone. Ultimately, it might mean better movies released and more, at least maybe not necessarily better, but more creatively owned by the actual talent that's making them. Okay, let's move on to the Emmy Awards and talk about television generally. So the Emmy Awards were on Sunday night. I did not watch them. Jeremy, did you watch?
I did not.
I didn't think you would, but I just wanted to check. Anyway, I'll just read the quick blurb from the New York Times here, which is, The Crown dominated the 73rd Emmy Awards on Sunday night, winning awards for Best Drama, Direction and Writing, and sweeping the Drama Acting Awards. Ted Lasso won big in the comedy categories. It was named Best Comedy, and it took home the top awards for 3 of the 4 comedic acting categories, including for Jason Sudeikis, who was named Best Actor. And The Queen's Gambit was named Best Limited Series. So I don't want to get into all the stuff. I did a little bit of reading about some of the theatrics, some of the actual show itself. I heard it wasn't very good, but there were some certain things. Conan apparently was quite funny. He didn't win, though he probably should have. And then spent the rest of the event kind of just being hilarious. So, that's whatever. But for me, obviously, and the most important thing I think here is that Ted Lasso, which is why I have Ted Lasso on behind me, basically swept the comedy side of things at the Emmys. And I think rightfully so. Now, there is some backlash about whether or not the Emmys themselves are too narrow in their scope, in the sense that, like, you can have an acting category and 3 of the 5 nominees can be from the same show, right? Or you can have a writing nomination category and there'll be 4 writers on the same show for different episodes, and like, what does that really mean? And are we really highlighting the right things? But I think one of the things that people brought up when I was listening to people talking about this, which is really, I thought, fascinating, was this idea that, like, it's really hard to see everything when you're talking about TV shows. How much of a TV show do you need to see before you can make your decision on who you're going to award? If you're casting a vote for these awards. It's not like a movie. You can watch way more movies in the same amount of time that you can watch a series of television shows. So I think that's fair, and I don't really know if there's a way to fix it. But I do see, it does seem like going forward, or like at least looking back a little bit, the same shows tend to win over and over and over again, right? We talk about SNL winning every year. Talk about what's it called? Late Night Tonight or whatever, This Week Tonight with John Oliver. It wins every single year. The Crown seems to win every single year. Last year we had Schitt's Creek basically sweep all these things. It's like, it seems like when something wins, it wins everything. And it's probably due because most people can only watch the stuff that's popular, or the stuff that's big, the stuff that's getting attention. Ted Lasso's getting a lot of attention. And I think Jason Sudeikis is totally 100% deserving of that award, by the way. I think he does a great job in that show. There's a bunch of the rest of the cast won. The cast themselves were, from what I saw from the clips, were having a great time at the show and the awards, and it really felt like an extension of the show in some degree. which is really fun. But unless you like Ted Lasso, there's not a lot there for you. And let me just put it this way: I'm sick of hearing about The Crown. The Crown's been on, it feels like, for forever. And I know it's good. I get it. I understand it. It's just not my type of show. So it's like, is there other dramas out there that are doing interesting things? I've heard people talk about The Queen's Gambit a lot. I should see it. I know, but I don't know. I find it interesting that there isn't more diversity of winners, and I'm not necessarily talking about diversity in the kind of the Oscars so white type of meaning. I'm just talking about just like we're talking about the same shows winning over and over again. And I think that's boring. So I don't know, Jeremy. What's your thoughts on all things Emmys? And be as brief as you like.
I mean, all I heard about was Ted Lasso. To be honest, I heard like obviously some controversy with some of the winners and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really have too much to say about the Emmys.
Well, I would say, Jeremy, if this doesn't convince you to watch Ted Lasso, I don't know what will. But the other thing that
everyone's tweeting now, that is it just me, or like they're not as into it now or something like that because it's second season. So I don't know what's going on with that.
That's interesting, Jeremy. I'm feeling that a little bit.
You're seeing that on the tweets.
What I'm saying is that when I'm watching the show, I'm not feeling the same heights that I felt like when I watched season 1, and it's but ultimately, like, the heights of season 1 were so high, it's really hard to reach that again. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm still very much enjoying it. I still wait up on Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday nights, because it premieres Fridays. Thursday nights, and I stay up late till midnight to actually watch the show. So it still means something to me. I still love it. I still absolutely love it. I just think I think it's an expectations thing, Jeremy. We talk about expectations on the show all the time, right? And
when you said I wait up, it reminded me of when Robin in Batman Forever says, "Don't wait up, Al," to Alfred.
I was talking about Ted Lasso, and the first thing you thought of was Batman and Robin.
You said you wait up for the show. So
yeah, I do.
That's what reminded me.
I'm sitting there in front of my TV. I'm looking at my clock, and I'm saying, "Man, can't wait for Ted Lasso to drop." And I joke, but that's a little bit true. So, to me, it's still one of the best shows out there right now, and I think it absolutely deserves everything it won here today. Here's something that I don't think deserves to win anything. Okay, Hamilton won Best Variety Special. It beat out Bo Burnham's Inside, which I thought was one of the most interesting things I saw all year. It's not even close. It beat out the Friends reunion. It beat out the West Wing special. It beat 846, the Dave Chappelle special. And we're talking about Hamilton. We've been talking about this musical for the last 5 years. And it premiered on Disney Plus as a video recording of the stage play, and it somehow won an Emmy over these, I think, much more deserving winners. So I don't know. I'm not going to beat the dead horse here. I actually love Hamilton, and I loved what it did on Disney Plus. I thought it was great, and I would highly recommend watching it if you've never seen it. But it doesn't deserve to win an Emmy. It already won all the things it can win in its own category. Like, it has its own award show. The Tonys are for this specific thing. It doesn't. What's it doing here? I guess I don't know. That's kind of a whole different thing. Anywho, the other thing that was a big upset is lead actor in a limited series. Ewan McGregor won for Halston, which is I saw a preview for it. It looks like a really weird show. He basically plays this like fashion mogul designer, and you know me, Jeremy. I love me some Ewan McGregor, but I don't know if I'm gonna watch the show. But he did beat out Paul Bettany for WandaVision in that category. So that's interesting. And there was that HBO show.
Right?
No, they didn't. Nothing for The Mandalorian. Nothing for WandaVision.
Can we please just stop talking about WandaVision?
You feel the same way about that, like as I feel about The Crown?
I guess.
I don't know. Jeremy, they were asked about WandaVision season 2, and there very well may be a season 2 of that show. So I would not be shocked if that conversation continues. Anywho, we'll turn the page there. Neil Druckmann, the writer and creative director behind The Last of Us, will seemingly direct at least one episode of the HBO adaptation of The Last of Us. And this was revealed kind of in a kind of backwards way. This is revealed through the show's production list in the Directors Guild of Canada website. So it is being filmed in Canada, like most things are these days. And it looks like Neil Druckmann is going to direct an episode, at least one. What do you think about that? He comes from directing video games. It's a different world, but what's your thought on that?
I think it was bound to happen. I expected it almost. I mean, he like the way he writes and creates his games are very cinematic and very character driven and nuanced with all that stuff. So I think it's sweet. I think it's fascinating. I think it's awesome that a game director gets the chance to create a live action series, but also just kind of focus on one episode in particular and just make it his own.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's like the most exciting episode like right now in my head.
Right. You're gonna be looking to see, when am I gonna be able to watch Neil Druckmann's episode?
Exactly.
I totally agree with that, but I think for a little bit different reason. I think I'm fascinated to see how does the skill of directing a game, and obviously, like you said, the games are very cinematic already, but how does he translate those skills to directing a movie? This is or a TV show. It's very different medium, similar but different, right? The tools are different. The limitations are very, very different. So I'll be watching it. The thing is, we already know the first season is going to be very much following the story of the first game. They've already told us that it's not really going to diverge too much from the story, which I think is fine because what it's going to let me be able to do while watching it is kind of dissect it in a little bit more of a instead of saying, oh well, the game did it better, or the show did it better, whatever. It's going to be more like, what's it doing with this medium that the game either couldn't do or wasn't doing well? How do they translate the characters? That kind of stuff I think is going to be most fascinating to me. And Jeremy, we talked about The Last of Us 2, and I said, this game doesn't need to be a game. I would be fine if this was a movie, or a show, right? So we're really kind of getting that with this show, and I'm not necessarily know if I'm going to be proven right or wrong. I don't think there's any way to know that, but I'll be interested to see kind of was my thought on that at least somewhat founded fairly. Maybe not. I don't know, but I want to know what this story looks like taken to live action. It's just we just really haven't seen anything like this in this way, right? Like taking a game and translating it into a movie or TV. We have seen, but it's always sucked mostly. The Sonic movie obviously being the obvious exception, but we just haven't seen anything like this, and it's going to be so close to the original. Like, what does that mean? I don't know. I'm fascinated. I'm really excited. So we'll see what that looks like. Do we know when it's coming yet, Jeremy? Like next year sometime, I'm guessing.
Probably next year, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Amazon Studios is developing a She-Ra live-action series based on the characters from Mattel's Masters of the Universe franchise. This is coming from Variety. DreamWorks Animation, which produced the recent She-Ra Princess of Power animated series reboot on Netflix, is executive producing, and the new She-Ra series is in early development, and a writer is not yet attached. It'll be a standalone story, unconnected from the previous animated series from 2018. Now, the reason I bring this up in this part of the episode at all, and touch on this as a news story in any way, is because I actually watched that entire series of the 2018 She-Ra series, and I thought it was one of the best animated series I've seen in a very long time. It was very well nuanced. The characters were diverse and interesting. And I just thought it was really well written. It looked really good. The music was great. It had a distinct style and feel, and it committed to it. It has 5 seasons, and I think it has a rare, solid ending, which you don't see very often on Netflix. And though I'd love to see more, I'm interested to see what you can do with a live action She-Ra. We've seen what we can do with a live action He-Man. It wasn't great. So, we'll see. But, I think it's coming from DreamWorks. They are, they're masterminds behind I think that a successful series. They seem to have found a voice for the character and a world that is, I think rich and like full of a lot of different fascinating dynamics and character dynamics. And they said this is standalone and it's not connected, but I would be shocked if they didn't use some elements of that show as a baseline to kind of create this series, because it was widely popular, I think, and critically acclaimed. And I think they'd be silly not to. So I'll keep a close eye on this because it's a little bit close to my heart. I really, Jeremy, have gotten into this Master of the Universe kind of universe, for lack of a better word, because it's this really, I think, really cool, fascinating combination of magic and technology that we've seen in other places before, but it feels like original enough and thoughtful enough that and sure was based around and built around a TV series, or a toy line, and turned into a TV series. But there's this really cool line between the technology that's kind of advanced, kind of Star Wars-esque technology, level of technology, and maybe it's because of how similar that is to Star Wars, because it has that similar kind of magic and technology combination that I'm obviously attracted to. But it's different enough from Star Wars that I still like it, and there's just not a lot of that stuff out there. So I would recommend, if someone's looking for a new animated series to watch that's interesting, I would recommend She-Ra and the Princess of Power. Okay. Last bit of news here, Jeremy. I don't know if you saw this. Anthony Mackie will star in a Twisted Metal live action series. Now, we already knew that a Twisted Metal live action series is coming, but like, what the hell? What do you make of that?
I don't know. My first thought is like, what is his agent thinking? Like, I don't. Like, that's the next big project you want to do after becoming Captain America.
I mean, if you compare it directly to what Chris Evans did after Captain America, I guess after stepping down from Captain America, and in Knives Out, I think went for a intentionally very different type of role. He plays a bad guy in that movie, right? Kind of an asshole. Yeah, spoilers. He's an asshole in that movie. That's not a spoiler. That's in the trailer. And I thought that was a smart move, because it, like, now you're like, I don't want to be typecast. I'm not just the good.
Yeah,
I'm not the blue boy.
I just mean like just another like IP that that someone's banking on will resonate and be a huge thing. But I don't like. I mean, the games didn't sell
not
well
relevant.
Recently. Not really relevant.
Yeah,
like, I mean,
yeah.
It's just banking on pure nostalgia from the PS1 classic, I guess, or maybe the PS2 version. But
right.
I don't know. And like star in it, like it's a wide cast of characters too, right? Like,
yeah. Like, is he gonna play Sweet Tooth? Like, I don't.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
I don't even
that's
know.
What we remember is just Sweet Tooth,
Yeah.
right? Like the ice cream truck on fire.
I couldn't name another character, Jeremy. I couldn't. That's literally it. What I understand, though, they're half-hour episodes. I think that's the right call for anything Twisted Metal. Like, it doesn't need to be an hour-long drama. And like, I know that Sony, like PlayStation, is kind of saying, "Hey, we're going to line up our hit game franchises. We're going to try to convert them into television series and movies." Uncharted is a part of that. Kind of started before they kind of started this new initiative. Twisted Metal is a part of that, and we'll probably see similar thing. Last of Us is obviously part of that as well. But The Last of Us looks good, whereas I don't know. My expectations for a Twisted Metal series are probably like as low as they can be, So, and the last thing I saw Anthony Mackie do that was, other than him as Captain America, was in that sci-fi show on Netflix that got canceled in season 2, and he played I can't even remember what the hell the name of that show was. Anyway, that was the last thing, and he was fine in that. I like Anthony Mackie. I think he's a good actor, but I think you're right, Jeremy. I think you're right to question the decision making here, unless it's like he's seeing something we don't know. Maybe this is going to be great. Let's, I guess, try to stay positive, but not going to get my hopes up for this one. I think that's the best. That's the best you can ask for. Okay, let's start to wrap this up. Before we move into what we've been watching, I'll just mention that Norm Macdonald has passed away this last week due to cancer, which he told no one about. And so I did a little bit of, and the thing is, I always liked Norm Macdonald, but I never clocked it as man, I really, attach to him specifically and his name and all that kind of stuff. But he's a Canadian actor, just long line of hilarious Canadians in Hollywood. But I went and I watched his Netflix special, Hitler's Dog, and I thought it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. And it's so good. His sense of humor is so dry and it's so dark, but it's so whimsical at the same time. And it's got this, and there's a certain kind of storytelling quality to the way he tells a joke, where it kind of it goes from, you start in one place and you go to another thing just tangentially, which tangentially leads to another thing, which leads to another thing, and it all comes around and it feels satisfying because it all kind of closes up in a nice bow. And I just think it's so smart and intelligent, and he had a checkered past, I think, with some of his his comedy from the past, from his SNL days and whatnot. But that was before my time in a lot of ways, and the Norm Macdonald that I know from the last several years was just so funny and so sharp and on point, and really just highlighted things that made sense. So sucks to see him go. Another tragic loss to cancer. Jeremy, have you seen a lot of Norm Macdonald stuff?
No, I haven't. I'm mostly familiar with him from SNL. I knew that he was fired and it was controversial and all that stuff. And then I found him, Billy Madison, obviously a super super funny character in that movie. But then I think most people, I think people are just going to YouTube and just seeing compilations or whatever videos, and just really really seeing how funny he really was. And then he kind of, there's also interviews coming out how he just talks about how if he ever did have cancer or any sort of illness, he wouldn't talk about it because it's kind of seeking attention, or feel sorry for me and all that stuff. He doesn't want that to be the memory, right? And I think right now people are just focusing on what he did and how funny he was, and they're just watching these videos all the time now, it seems. So
yeah,
I think that's super cool.
Yeah, there's Conan, who had a close relationship with him, mentioned that he thinks that it's a real shame that he passed away not knowing how much this major outpouring for him came following his death. And basically Conan saying if people had known that he had cancer, I think he would have felt a lot of love from people, and kind of understood what he meant to people. And he really feels like it's a shame that he didn't get to experience that before he died. And I thought that was just really sad. There's something tragic about when a comedian passes away, that makes it just so much harder, because they brought people so much joy in their life, and then you kind of find out that they're just people and that they have their own problems and struggles of their own. It kind of makes the world a little bit grayer, and it sucks. So anyway, I just recommend going, like you said, go to YouTube, look up compilations of his stuff. It's really funny. There's the moth joke, which he tells on Conan, which is great. Like I said, there's the comedy special. He has his own little show on Netflix. I'm going to watch that. I haven't watched it yet, where he brings on other celebrities and they kind of chit chat and stuff. So I'm going to look at that. And then there's one other thing on Norm Macdonald that I would recommend, Nerd Writer, which is one of the best YouTube channels I've ever seen. This guy who hasn't made a lot of stuff recently, but basically he does these video essays and he explores art and life, and he just does this like the most brilliant dissections of anything. And so he does one on the way Norm Macdonald tells a joke, and it breaks it down into kind of the fundamentals of how he tells the jokes, and it doesn't make his stuff any less funny. It only makes Norm Macdonald seem that much more brilliant, I think. So if you haven't seen that, I recommend Nerd Writer. I think it's I don't remember the exact title, but it's something like How Norm Macdonald Tells a Joke. So look that up. It's really, really, really good as well. Okay, so let's talk about what we've been watching. I mentioned, Jeremy, at the top of the show that I watched U.S. Marshals and The Negotiator. Okay, now they're both from the same year. Okay, they're both from 1998. Okay, and one I thought was much better than the other. Which one do you think I liked more? Just, you have a 50-50 chance here.
The Negotiator.
Correct. That is who I liked more. This is a movie directed by F. Gary Gray, and the synopsis. Sorry.
And stars Kevin Spacey
and Samuel L. Jackson. And in a desperate attempt to prove his innocence, a skilled police negotiator accused of corruption and murder takes hostages in a government office to gain the time he needs to find the truth. It is awesome, Jeremy. Now, it feels like a 90s movie in some of the worst ways, but what I gotta say, I gotta give the movie credit because it does not introduce the probably the best actor in this movie, Kevin Spacey, until almost I don't know if it's halfway, but at least a quarter of the way into the movie. He's not even seen, mentioned, whatever, until shit hits the fan, and we're dealing with this like really, I think, fascinating mystery of kind of like who set him up, right? And then watching as Samuel L. Jackson kind of does his usual shtick, but as he uses his skills as a negotiator to kind of, and his knowledge of how the police force works to prove his innocence. It's so cool, Jeremy. I can't.
Yeah, I've seen it.
I'm not trying to ask you to watch it. I'm just saying I really thought it was, brilliantly done. It's a really good movie, I thought. Meanwhile, we have U.S. Marshals, and I did not like it as much. It's just it's just the most cliche propaganda movie I might have ever seen. The log line here is U.S. Marshal Samuel Gerard and his team of marshals are assigned to track down Sheridan, who has been accused of a double murder. Now, the villain is played by Wesley Snipes in this movie, and I think he does a fine job. And Robert Downey Jr. plays this young, kind of like up and coming U.S. Marshal federal agent situation here, but all of it feels so by the numbers. There's some kind of exciting set pieces where there's like a plane crash, an escape from that, and the thing that I think is really funny though is that this movie obviously had a huge budget for its time, and movies like this just aren't really made anymore. So I can appreciate that in and of itself, but it feels like this movie is just Tommy Lee Jones yelling at people to do stuff constantly. Like that's the entire movie. And normally, by the way, as everyone who listens to the show knows, I love when people yell something and someone yells that same thing for someone else to do it. This movie is missing that second piece. It's just Tommy Lee Jones yelling at people, and usually over the sound of a helicopter landing, because I swear to God, there's like 50 helicopters that land in this movie. It's one of those kind of, lack of a better term, dad movies. It's like, how can we watch Tommy Lee Jones just be really good at his job? He doesn't really have much of a character other than he's a good cop. But it's fine, and I think there's like an interesting enough twist at the end that I think is also fine. But and I understand there's a sequel to this movie, or at least like a movie where he plays the same U.S. Marshal character again. I could be wrong on that. But Jeremy, have you seen U.S. Marshals?
I believe so, but it's been a while.
Do you have any thoughts on these movies, or having seen them back to back like I did?
I just think it's hilarious that Yeah, like they just seem like the same type of movie or whatever.
They are very similar.
And it's
I
just funny
mean,
that you decided to watch both of them.
and then they
And
both happen to be in this come out the same year. I mean,
yeah,
if you were a fan of cop movies, you were having a very good time in 1998. But anyway, I would recommend if if you only have to pick one, watch The Negotiator. But anyway, so that's what I've been watching. I've also seen. I haven't talked about this on the show. Free Guy. Have you seen Jeremy? Have you seen Free Guy yet?
if not, it's just in theaters, right?
It is in theaters right now. Correct. And I thought it was also just fine. um, it's I think it's kind of like a video game movie for people who kind of like only play Call of Duty, and that's okay. That's like there's a certain subsect of people who that's the case, right? But it's just like it feels like the video game references are very surface level, and the story that they're trying to tell about this kind of like advanced AI, who Ryan Reynolds is playing, is um is stupid. It's like it's so ridiculous, and the implications of it are massive, but they don't really touch on any of that. It's all instead we're just gonna have this fun, breezy adventure where this real life person falls in love with Ron Reynolds' made up character that doesn't exist in the real life. And there's a lot of allusions to, by the way, the Lego movie. It's very similar to the Lego movie, which is I think a great movie, very fun. This is just like a little bit more adult version of that. It certainly has its charm. I think that Ryan Reynolds kind of just he has a shtick now. He basically just does Deadpool now all the time, and I think that's unfortunate because I think he's a better actor than that. But he's basically just doing Deadpool, a little bit softer, a little bit more kind of like the main character from the Lego movie, which no one will remember that person's name. Anyway, I think it's fine. It's fun. Taika Waititi plays a villain in this movie, and big Taika Waititi fan, as you know. But he's not really doing anything special here, and he's only kind of funny, which is unfortunate. I just feel like he's normally funnier than this, and it's just a lot of close calls, in my opinion. Like it's
Thor 4 is in trouble then.
No, I don't think so, because this is not his movie, right? This is a Sean Levy movie. It's written by Matt Lieberman, Zach Penn. This isn't a Taika movie. He's just in it, and that's fine. I just think that overall, it's not really saying anything interesting, and it's kind of dealing with this kind of like, what if Grand Theft Auto was a MMO, but also like indistinguishable from real life almost. It's fine. It's really fluffy. I would say is the best way to describe it. It's very much a popcorn flick. If you're looking for just like a fun, breezy way to spend an hour and a half, an hour and 55 minutes, excuse me, which I think is an appropriate length of time for a movie like this, would recommend. But don't go in expecting great things. It's just okay. That's my take on Free Guy. There will likely be a sequel. It did do well, but anyway, so that's that. And then obviously, of course, we've been watching Marvel's What If, but I think we should save our conversation on that until all the episodes have come out. I will say that I do have my favorites. I think the most recent one I did not love, which was the Black Panther episode. I did not love that episode. There was also a Star-Lord episode. That's episode 2. I thought that was really, really good. The Doctor Strange episode, which has one of the most, I think, brilliant endings to anything. Like, this is just like, I got to give Marvel props for even attempting what it attempted in that episode. I thought it's like not subversive, but I think for Marvel it might be. In how ballsy it ends, I think it's really cool. So, and of course the zombies episode is just really fun. So there's a lot of good stuff there, but we'll kind of wait till it's all said and done, because I think we'll want to touch on it, I think, as a whole instead of just as one-offs. Jeremy, do you have any thoughts on Marvel's What If so far?
I haven't watched any, so I do not.
Not one.
Not one.
Are you waiting for all of them, or you're just not grabbing you?
I don't know. I mean, I guess when they're all out, maybe I'll take a peek at them. I don't know. I just don't care.
Fair
You
enough.
got,
Okay.
someone's got to sell me on them, you know.
Well, yeah, I don't know, Jeremy. It's like if you liked the Marvel movies from Phase 1 and Phase 2, you're gonna get enjoyment out of these.
Yeah.
It's just like it's fun callbacks. It's like there is something to be said about just like twists on these stories that being just inherently interesting. Because it's asking that question, what if, right? And we've all asked those questions. What if this was different? What if that was different? And I know people have been talking about like, what if there was a Star Wars what if? I would be super down for that, you know. And I think the animation is mostly pretty great. I would say it looks really good sometimes and not so good other times, but overall pretty good. Not quite as good as what they did with Into the Spider-Verse and stuff like that. Different studio, obviously, but it's kind of going for a similar look, and it's not quite nailing it quite as well as Into the Spider-Verse did. Okay, that will do it for this week's episode of the Tower Babble podcast. You can find everything we do at towerbabble.ca and head over to Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, and you can tune in, subscribe, like, all that kind of stuff over on YouTube, Twitch, and obviously Twitter to watch live and subscribe to know when we go live. If you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, comments, head over to your nearest email service, whichever you use. They're all interconnected, and you can send us an email to towerofbabblepodcast@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to read your questions and comments on the air. And until then, we'll be talking to you soon, and we'll have more Tower Babble for you right away. Okay. Quick and easy.
Was that quick?
Well, an hour and a half. It's not quick. We've done longer.